Techniniai nesklandumai, nesuprantu, palato, bandau. Ai. Dabar turėtumėt matyti. Matosi?
Taip. Taip.
Tai šiandien kalbėsime apie relative clauses and linking words. So today we'll talk about the definition of relative clauses, defining them, then non-defining relative clauses, usages of whom and whose. Then we'll talk about defining versus non-defining relative clauses, and for the end, linking words. So the definition of relative clauses is a word combination that includes a subject and a verb. So a relative clause is a dependent clause that cannot stand alone in a sentence, gives more information about a noun, and there are two types of clauses, so non-defining and defining. And what that means, tai čia maždaug kaip šalutinis sakinys. Tiesiog it cannot function as a sentence on its own. Negali funkcionuoti kaip sakinys. So if a defining clause is removed, the meaning of the sentence would change or become incomprehensible. It is an essential part of a sentence, and these are the relative pronouns or adverbs used when we try to link those two clauses. So if we want to talk about, if we want to define a subject, for example, so for people we would use who or that. For animals and objects, we could use that and which. If we want to talk about or define an object, then we'd use who, whom, or that for people, and for animals and objects, that, which. And if we want to talk about and define something that we possess, so we use whose for people, and animals and objects, whose as well. And there are also for adverbs for place and time, so where and when. So I think that most of you already know how to use them, when to use them, and for what occasions, but it's just a simple reminder for that. So defining relative clause. As you know, in the English language, commas aren't that important compared to Lithuanian. So when we have these relative clauses, commas are not necessary. So here you can see the examples. She is the one who sent me the email. This is the video that I wanted to show you. These are the flights that have been cancelled. She is the woman who cuts my hair. There was a 1-year guarantee which came with the TV. So commas are not necessary, and as you can see, there are two clauses, and if we take one of them out from that sentence, the sentence as a whole or that clause on itself would not function. So for example, she's the one. It can be a sentence, but sent me the email, so who sent me an email, you need to answer. So again, it would not function as a sentence. Sometimes the relative pronoun can be omitted. So the assistant we met was really kind. So we don't need who or that in this. We can omit it. And however, if the structure is subject plus relative pronoun plus verb, the relative pronoun cannot be omitted. So the assistant that helped us was really kind. So we cannot omit the relative pronoun.
Okay, I believe it is my turn to talk now. So I will simply introduce the non-defining relative clause, the second group of relative clauses in general. So the main difference between non-defining and defining relative clause is that non-defining clause provides only extra information. It means that if a non-defining clause is removed, the sentence does not change in a certain way, and one who is reading that sentence can comprehend what is being said. So there are the relative pronouns and adverbs used. As you can see, it is the same table as in previous slide. The only difference between them is that we don't use that as a relative adverb pronoun in this case. So if you want to give extra information, you have to choose one of those relative pronouns or adverbs. Now, if we move on, commas are needed to set out the additional extra information. So it means that at all times, when you want to emphasize something additional, you need to set out that information. So from both sides, commas are going to be needed. So for example, Jack, who is retired now, spends a lot of time with his grandchildren. So it's pretty clear that if we remove the non-defining relative clause, which is who is retired now, you can see that the sentence just kind of flows and makes sense on its own. Then we can see that non-defining relative clause might also be used in the end of a sentence. We want to see the new film, which was released on Thursday. As you can see again, we want to see the new film is a perfect sentence that makes sense on its own. In addition, adverbs were also given as a possible starter of a non-defining relative clause. So for example, when. In the last sentence, December, when Christmas is celebrated, is a summer month in Australia. As you can see, when and where can also be used as a starter of a non-defining relative clause. Again, I want to really emphasize the fact that you have to put commas at all times when writing some kind of additional or extra information in a sentence. Now for the next slide, I want to really put emphasis on the usage of whom and whose, because it might be difficult to distinguish between those two words at sometimes and sometimes. And I want to emphasize that whom is an object pronoun which is used to ask or state which person receives an action. So I really put emphasis on person, but as you know, whom and whose is only used when we talk about a person, as well as who. Object pronouns are him, her, us, them, and me. So it's really easy to understand when we kind of ask a question when we write a sentence with whom, and we can see that it can be easily answered. As for example, whom will he blame? He will blame me, them, and her. So as you can see, object pronouns, her, them, and me. It means that if a question is asked with a pronoun whom, then it can be answered with an object pronoun, which are given in these examples. So the main part from the usage of whom to be remembered is the fact that whom is used when a person receives an action. Whom are you going to invite to the party? Whom did he hire to do the job? Of course, these two words may be used, may not be used in a modern texts or modern speech, because it is sometimes looked to as kind of obsolete and non-used anymore variant of pronouns, and it can be changed into who. But I think it's nice to really see the difference between whom and whose. Now, if we talk about whose, which is in the second slide, it is a possessive pronoun, which is used to ask again which person something belongs to. So as you can see in the examples, whose mug is this? It means to what person this mug, this something belongs to. This is the woman whose purse was stolen. So as you can see again from the examples, whose is used when we want to define something as belonging to some kind of a person. I contacted Mike, whose company is one of Britain's top outlets. It means that the company belongs to Mike, and so on and so on. So I think it's pretty clear now. Now, if we move on to the next slide, I want to really put emphasis again on the defining relative clause and non-defining relative clause. What are the main differences between them? So as you can see, defining relative clause is only used when essential information is provided. It means when you provide some kind of information and you do not put commas to distinguish it and so on. And if you take it out from a sentence, the sentence does not make sense anymore. So it means that commas are not needed because it is one flowing sentence. Of course, we can take a look at that, which can sometimes be used and sometimes omitted. It really depends on the sentence that you're using. However, that may be used. And if you cannot change that pronoun into that, it means it is a non-defining relative clause, because that cannot be used instead. As well as only extra information is provided in the non-defining relative clause, and commas are to be used at all times, because you really want to put emphasis on the information that is not essential in the sentence. Now I give the floor to my colleague.
So about linking words, this is a really important topic, and especially for writing essays, because linking words kind of connect clauses and makes a language flow, make up a language flow, and also demonstrate the conditions on which they are related. So there are two general types of linking words, such as linking to separate sentences or linking clauses within a sentence. And also there are more types of connecting phrases that I will cover in the following slides. So now we can move on to the next slide. So first is emphasis linking words, and the function in a way that they put forward an idea or point more forcefully. So for example, phrases such as significantly, notably, of course, in particular, in fact, it should be noted, actually, undoubtedly, absolutely, importantly, in truth, obviously, as it happens, definitely, and clearly. So from these things, it's really like a strong statement or a strong sentence. So if you're really sure about the sentence you're about to write, then use this word. But in other cases, there are a few others that I will tell you about. So we can move on to a next slide now. Another is addition linking words, and they are used to add to what has been previously stated. So additionally, from this point, as well as further, moreover, also, besides, in addition, furthermore, lastly, secondly, not only something, but also something else. So this would be addition linking words. Now we can move on to the next slide. And this is contrast linking words, and they function as words that show how ideas or points differ. So with such phrases as alternatively, contrary to, in spite of, as opposed to, contrarily, conversely, despite, despite of, on the other hand, nevertheless, instead, and so on. Later on, we will fix the slides because I believe it's a bit of a mess since we saved it from the share slides. And now we can move on to another, yes. And all the linking words are used to indicate the order of what is being said in the text. So as firstly, secondly, thirdly, these are the most popular ones, I believe, and they always keep the text coherent and very clear. So even in my academic writing, I prefer to use these ones for my essays. And then there are for the last paragraph or something, finally, also phrases such as above all, last but not least, first and foremost. And now we can move on to another slide. There are also linking words for result. So they function as providers of the result of what has been stated previously. So accordingly, due to, then, therefore, as a result of, for this reason, consequently, hence, and thus. And the other one is illustration linking words, and they are used to provide examples, and they are really useful ones because in your essays, I am not really sure about letters, but in essays, it is really good to provide examples, even if you think of them. It's really useful, and they might that might get you some extra points. So for such, you can use phrases as an example of, in this situation, such as, like, for instance, to clarify, including, for example, in this case, to demonstrate, and namely. And the other linking words are for comparison, and they function in a way that they show how things are similar. So compared to, equally, same way, in the same way, similarly, at the same time, correspondingly, and likewise. And now we can move on to another type of linking word, which is summary, and they function in a way that they sum up what has been said previously, what has been previously stated. So all things considered, overall, generally, given these points, in short, to sum up altogether, as noted, in conclusion, in essence, and to conclude. So these are used for, as stated in the type of linking words, for summary or conclusion. And now we can move on to the reason. So they function, linking words function in a way that they provide reasons for what has been stated. So the linking words would be such as because of, in view of, so that, provided that, in fact, given that, with this in mind. So this is these words are used to provide a reason, once again. Yes, and now we can move on to condition. So condition linking words are used to provide a condition to what has been stated. So because of, in that case, only if, then, unless, while, on the condition, even if. And now we can move on to the last one, I think so. Concision, yeah, sorry, concision. And these linking words function as connecting words and phrases to accept a point with reservation. So phrases such as although, even though, and yet, and still, even if, even so, nonetheless, nevertheless, regardless of this, in spite of, and however. And I think, oh, there's one more, generalization. So generalization linking words are used to make a general statement. So as a rule, it is known in most cases, broadly speaking, for the most part, commonly, generally speaking, more often than and usually, on the whole, often, and overall. And I think that is it. And there's one more.
No.
Okay, so that would be it. And if you have any questions, please let us know so we can try to answer them. And once again, the words really mixed up because we just saved them from web, from SharePoint.
Yeah. It'll be fixed. If you want, I think we can put them on Facebook group or somewhere. I guess it would be probable.
Yes, so if I see that it's only Victoria here, so if you have any questions, you can ask us right now, or if you don't want to talk, you can just send a message in the message area. So, yes.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for attending. It really means a lot to us.
Yes. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, then I guess we are finished, right? I can stop the recording?
Yes, I think so.